Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. How far are you willing to go to take responsibility for yourself? Today I'm in Numbers 5 through 6, and I am thinking about this because when I had to take responsibility for my health, there was a very real reason to do that. I was sick. I was imbalanced. My body wasn't working right, and I didn't have an option. The medical profession had failed me. It wasn't going to be able to help me. And so my only option if I wanted health was to strike out on my own. And that means more than just trying to eat better and maybe taking a supplement. It really, to take charge of your health again, is to strike out and kind of live separate, to live apart. You aren't eating the way that everybody else in the mainstream is eating, and the place that you even come from understanding how the body works and how the body is designed, sets you apart. So today in Numbers 5 through 6, this comes to mind because we have the vow of the Nazarite. I know if you're reading along with me, probably really tempted to talk or want to talk about the grain offering of jealousy, which is fascinating. And there are some things, I did go down that rabbit hole just for a moment. And for those of you not reading along, there's this whole recitation of this process where if a man suspects that his wife is unfaithful, that he takes her to the temple and the priest makes her eat water that's got the temple's dirt mixed into it, and if she's been unfaithful, she's cursed and her abdomen swells and her thigh withers, and there's all kinds of stuff. And if you want to go down that rabbit hole, there is precedent. This was a practice throughout the region at the time. So it wasn't just in the Israelite camp that this was going on. But I digress, because what I think is more interesting in this couple chapters is the vow of the Nazarite. And I think we can get really focused on this whole, you can't cut your hair for a year and you can't drink anything. They couldn't drink anything that was a grape product. So not even wine, like obviously wine, but not even juice or eating grapes or vinegar could be done. It was a real vow. And I didn't really know what this was. So I started digging in, and this is fascinating to me. So the vow of the Nazarite was somebody who's a layman. This is somebody who is living amongst the Israelites. So we have the different tribes, and they all have different jobs and specialties. We have the Levites, who have been tasked with carrying the temple, caring for the temple, being the buffer, protecting it, and then actually some of them acting as priests. They are set apart. They were set apart by God. He claimed them as His own, and that meant that they were doing all the atoning for all of the other tribes. So if we kind of imagine the Levites camped, and I think about them in camp. So the Levites camped around the temple, and that's all they do. They just do the temple. They just do the atonement and the sacrificing and all of the things to make God happy with the rest of Israel. So making Israel safe to be traveling with God, atoning for them. Every time they went into the temple, they were atoning for themselves as a priest, and then they were atoning for all of Israel so that God didn't lash out and destroy them all. So this is their whole job. And meanwhile, the rest of Israel, all the other tribes, are camped around this buffer zone, and they have other jobs, other tasks day to day. They're raising animals, they're raising grain, they're doing what they do. But their job is not to interface with God. That's done by somebody else. So, in a sense, it's farmed out for them. Somebody else takes care of that for them. They've got to live a good life. That's their responsibility. But somebody else in the Levite camp is running that interference and serving God. It's not like now that we have the new covenant where God can indwell us and we can have a personal relationship and we can have a personal mission with God. We can serve God directly without being a priest. This was, you were either a priest or you were somebody else. And everybody else just went about their lives and then brought in their atonement for the priest to sacrifice for them. The vow of the Nazarite was from somebody who was in this outside camp that just felt really drawn and passionate and called to serve God specifically, but they weren't part of the Levite camp. So that wasn't something that they had already been set aside. They were a part of another purpose. The vow of the Nazarite gave that lay person an opportunity to set themselves apart, just like the Levites were, but remain in their own lane, so to speak. So they were able to dedicate themselves by following this vow for a week, a month, a year, a few years, sometimes rarely. We have a couple people in the Bible that were Nazarites that it was a lifelong vow, but usually it was a temporary thing. And to end the Nazarite vow, you cut off your hair, you went through a specific process of sacrifices to end your period of this special set apartness. And I think how amazing that is. Here you have all of that covered for you. You're living in a camp. God's there and you're taken care of, but somebody else is managing that relationship. And what a beautiful precursor to what we would be allowed to do much later in history. So now, this was a nod to our ability to sacrifice parts of our lives and give ourselves over to go on a mission for God, to serve Him, and to make that choice. These people were making the choice to be set aside instead of being set aside by God as His choice. And that's powerful. I think it's powerful to think about in light of living apart now in and understanding how your food's being raised and understanding that you're going to make different choices and sometimes you're going to make compromises, but you're a weirdo. you're weird at the family gatherings. You're purposely setting yourself apart because you're trying to walk on God's narrow road of health instead of the wide road where it's easy and everybody's comfortable with your choices. It's a precursor for that sort of life, and I think it's a very beautiful symbol of what we are able to do now in our spiritual life as well, that we can choose to be set apart. We can choose to sacrifice parts of our lives and dedicate ourselves wholly to doing God's will and serving Him. So really cool couple chapters here. And if you want to talk about the grain offering of jealousy, drop me a note. I definitely would love to chat more about that. But I pray that God is blessing you today and compelling you to dig into His Word and look deeper, and come back and see me again on another day soon. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Dawn Combs Really.